By the 1780s, there was widespread resentment in France, and the people decided to do something about it. They decided to have a revolution.
The causes of the revolution in 1780 were inequalities in society and Enlightenment ideas.
I'm the first estate, the Roman Catholic clergy. I didn't have to answer to anyone else or pay taxes, and we made up about 1% of the population.
I'm in the second estate, the nobility, and we make up 2% of the population. We didn't have to pay many taxes, and we can hold key positions in the government and military. Some of us get to live in luxury at the king's court, where our only jobs were ceremonial.
I'm in the third estate, and we make up 97% of the population. There are several groups within the third estate, and we are the bourgeois and are at the top. We are the highly educated and the wealthy, but we hold no power or influence in the government.
The next group is the sans-culottes, and we are the artisans and workers of the city.
The final group was the peasants. We farmed the nobles' fields and had to pay rents and fees to the landowners. The addition, 10% of our income, goes to the church.
Enlightenment ideas inspired people to want to change. Members of the bourgeois successfully rebelled against Great Britain's king because they knew Britain's government limited his power.
In the spring of 1789, none of the estates were happy.
We were unhappy because we lost power to the monarchy.
We were unhappy because government regulations prevented our businesses from growing, and we were not allowed to hold government or military positions.
We were unhappy because we couldn't find jobs, so we had no money and we were always hungry.
One of the first events that happened during the Revolution was the meeting of the Estates General. The first and second estates voted together against the third estate to approve new taxes on the third estate.
The storming of Bastille was another major event in the French Revolution. The Bastille was an old French prison seen as a sign of oppression. The storming became a powerful symbol in the French Revolution.
At the end of the Revolution, the National Assembly created the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, which legislated new rights. Restrictions on power were made, a new government was formed, and the monarchy was ended.
Going into a new era, France became a republic. There were three new factions: the Mountain, the Girondins, and the Plain.
The Mountains were the most radical, and their support came from lower middle class and poor people. By the middle of 1973, some revolutionary leaders feared they would lose control. The Mountain began a series of accusations, trials, and executions known as the Reign of Terror to avoid a counter-revolution.
The National Convention transformed society against religion. Peasants hated the anti-clerical feelings. There was a civil war in Vendée over the support of the Roman Catholic Church. There was savage fighting. The Reign of Terror continued for several years and spared nobody. There was 300,000 people arrested and 17,000 executed.
After the Reign of Terror ended, France made a new government called the National Convention. They made another constitution and a governing board called the Directory. The Directory was corrupt and weak, which led to the continued troubles in France. A power vacuum was created, leaving the power to be taken.
Napoleon Bonaparte was a ruthlessly ambitious young man. The turmoil of the French Revolution gave him a prime opportunity to quickly rise to power.
He started as a brilliant military leader who achieved many successes against Britain, Austria, Italy, and Egypt. He was put in charge of defending the French interior after stopping an uprising by French royalists.
The Directory had grown weak, and Napoleon's supporters forced the Directory to give Napoleon control of the government. Napoleon became a dictator, but was welcomed by the French people because he promised order and stability. The French people would willingly give up some freedoms if Napoleon could bring peace, prosperity, and glory to France.
Napoleon's first order of action after gaining power was to crown himself emperor. After that, he wanted to spread his influence to other places around the world. He soon had to give up his dream of having influence in the Americas, though, as he failed in controlling Haiti. After that failure, he started a series of wars that people soon began to call the Napoleonic Wars.
The Napoleonic Wars kept France in a state of warfare for more than a decade, and throughout it, Great Britain remained France's greatest enemy. France and Britain had a conflict called the Peninsular War that drew Spain and Portugal into the conflict. France eventually had to pull its troops out of Spain. Despite the setback, Napoleon managed to take control of most of Europe through treaties, alliances, and victories in battle.
As Napoleon ruled his empire, he developed a plan to establish order and efficiency throughout France. He made an agreement with the Pope called the Concordat and recognized the influence of the Roman Catholic Church, made the Bank of France, and set up a more efficient tax collection system, created the Napoleonic Code, and created universities.
Napoleon left a legacy throughout Europe, and his actions helped fuel the spread of nationalism, or the sense of identity and unity as a people. He couldn't keep his power forever, though, and soon things started declining.
The first part of Napoleon's downfall was his bad decision to take over Russia. The 600 troops he brought into Russia were from countries he had taken over, and the soldiers were not loyal. The army was able to get to Moscow and destroy it, but he had to retreat from the lack of supplies and bad weather.
Russia, Prussia, Austria, and Great Britain allied themselves against France and defeated Napoleon in battle. He had to give up his throne and was exiled to Elba.
The Allied countries restored the monarchy and returned the borders of France to what they originally were.
Napoleon wouldn't go away without a fight. He came back from exile, and this was the beginning of the 100 Days, a brief period of renewed glory for himself. Though after losing the Battle of Waterloo, he was once again exiled to St. Helena and died 6 years later mysteriously. Although we don't know how he died, it is presumed that he died from a stomach cancer.
Napoleon's reign was finally over, and never again would the monarchs and nobles be secure in their positions. The French Revolution is important for having inspired revolutions around the world.
Oh.